Oh, absolutely. I think two things really jump out to me based on what you've shared. The first is that a business owner and an entrepreneur is not the same thing. And I think probably one
Mm.
of the key distinguishing factors involved here is that an entrepreneur is about identifying opportunities, high risk tolerance, and they go out there and they have a dream or a purpose to create something of significance. Where for a business owner, it's not as extreme of an example as that. So I have seen that there's a difference between those two. And the other thing that really jumped out for me is that what you were speaking about is when you first start out, there's high technical you need high technical skill. But the more senior you get, the less the technical skill is actually relevant anymore because the technical skill you're going to start to delegate as you build your team. So then it does become more around being able to communicate, your leadership ability, your strategic thinking. And there's very little technical in that space.
Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people watching us from around the world, they say, "Oh, we know where Canada is. British Columbia, West Coast, right? Right. And is the big city called Vancouver? Well, we are 500 miles north of Vancouver, or 800 kilometers, which puts us physically in the center of British Columbia, north, south, east, and west. Beautiful region here, lots of friends all around us. We got black bears, grizzly bears, caribou, we got moose, we got wolves, we got foxes, you name it. We got them all here. We call it paradise. So today we have an interesting guest. Her name is Tracey Sundkvist, and Tracey shapes strategies for business owners to grow stronger. I like that. Scale faster, delight customers, and make more money. That in particular is the important part that most people will like about it. As a consultant and growth coach with over 10 years of crafting secure structures from chaos, be familiar with those as well. She helped hundreds of business owners mastering the 20% of activities that drive 80% of results. Tracey, tell us about your background, where you're located, where were you educated, where are you now, and then bring us to your unique entrepreneurship that you have been in for a long time, and all about the niche that you must have found in your superpower and personal transformation.
That's a lot. That's a lot of questions. Wow. I feel like I should be writing this all down just to make sure I don't miss anything. But before I jump
I will
right in
remind
there,
you.
I um I want to share. I tried to get into Canada and they turned me down. They said,
What?
"Tracy, you are too old."
Too
I said,
old?
"Okay."
You're only in your
Yep.
late 30s. How could that be?
Oh, that's so kind. That's so kind. Well, yeah, my documentation says something else. But I had dreams of moving to Canada and finding a little cabin somewhere. And as long as it had high speed internet, I was like, okay, I'm set. That is how I want to live.
So where are you now?
I'm in South Africa.
Oh, South Africa, in Johannesburg,
hmm
or where is it?
Um, Port Elizabeth.
Port
So I'm based
Elizabeth.
in South Africa, but my clients are actually based all across the United States.
Right.
Mhm.
So that's interesting, Tracy, because I've had a couple of people. One of my operations managers has a fellow that was born in South Africa and has been with us for about 4 or 5 years. And we had a hard time getting him over here as well. Why is it?
Well, I don't know. I would almost argue the opposite. I think that as a as a citizen of South Africa, we are incredibly resilient because there's a lot of change going on at the moment, economically, politically, everything.
Right.
So, transplant us into a different situation, a different social setting. I would imagine that any South Africa is just going to thrive under those conditions.
Exactly. You know,
Hmm.
so we have to explore that because you have such an unique skill set that I like you being here. So we have to work on that somehow. You know? Okay, tell
Yeah,
us
I
about
have to
your.
get famous first because I believe if you're famous, then things are easier. So yeah, I'm working on it.
Yeah. So I was born in Holland, and northeastern Holland, and uh, at the time that I emigrated to here, I was 24 years old. So that was 60 years ago. Now I'm 84 and a half years young. So,
Mhm.
and I love Canada and North America and all the things that are
Mhm.
happening here. So, tell us about your background, your education, and your niche in terms of entrepreneurship, successful businessing, and all of that
Mhm.
sort of thing.
Okay. So I was actually really a late bloomer. I I didn't know where I was going to fit. So I kind of wandered aimlessly until my 30s. And then I had a career shift and I got an opportunity to become a salesperson. It was in recruitment. And all of a sudden, I was interacting with people and I needed to be able to assess fit. So, fit of person, identify talent, and then, of course, match this talent to, corporates across the country. And for the first time, I actually was doing something that I was interested in, which was kind of bizarre because I was an introvert and I was expecting not to find my feet in sales or people. So that was weird. What happened from there is that I excelled. So it didn't feel like sales to me, it felt like just conversations. So I found it very easy. I got a top consultant in the country, and from there, what started with identifying talent really turned into, well, what then? So you have these incredibly talented people. How do you replicate that? How are they successful? And then compared to my early days, what was the difference? How do they think? You know what is different for them than everybody else? So this really became a question that I looked around in a bunch of different places, starting with consulting. So I opened up my own business. Of course, it was executive search, and I played very nicely. And I made all of the mistakes, like every single one of the mistakes that I now help entrepreneurs avoid. So, yeah, I made them. And I did very well. So I made a ton of money, but I was absolutely miserable. So I decided, okay, time to go back to the drawing board. I got into well, actually, the largest independent property developer in Africa, and I started working with development. So it was all a talent development, which was amazing because now I was sinking my teeth into all the models and theory of performance. So I'm going very long. I feel like this is like wow, wow, wow. I'm bored with myself already. So from there, what I did is I decided I'm going to study, and that's exactly what I did. I only finished my degree late in life. I was 43 when I finished it. So it was one of the things that I was so proud of. It was the first. I was the first in my family to actually have a degree,
And what was the
and
degree?
it's psychology.
Psychology. Okay.
Yeah. In between, I did a lot of different things. I tried a lot of different trainings in behavior, in neuroscience, in coaching, because I wanted to put something together to make a difference. So I didn't want to fall into that personal development space. I knew that for sure. I was not interested in being a life coach. What I wanted to do was I wanted to focus on building something significant, which was focused on the business, but through that, focusing on the person who was driving it. So now I kind of skirt two things. So on the one hand, it's consulting because sometimes you need to tell, And on the other hand, it's coaching. But then that's more the, supporting entrepreneurs to identify what's in their way, and then we work at getting that out their way.
Interesting. So if I look back then at you, you were an introvert, and then all of a sudden you became, in some areas, an extrovert, and you found your talent as being a very good communicator. And it came natural to you, to your own surprise. And obviously, you became very successful, found the niche, got your degree. Where did you get your degree? Was it in the place that you were
It was
born?
at University of South Africa. It's UNISA.
Yeah.
I had to do
South
it part-time
Africa
because I
has
was
very
working I was
good,
working full-time. Mhm.
right. South Africa has very, very good educational system. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's from,
I think education is almost like a controversial topic for me because I believe that you're going to get out what you put in. So,
yeah,
regardless of what they're going to teach you, if you are motivated and excited about what you're learning, you're going to apply yourself.
right.
But if you're absolutely not, then yeah, I think there's some personal responsibility in the quality of education.
So education is structured, either it's formal education or life education. Probably your life education, as you already indicated, you made all kinds of mistakes that then became the foundation of what took you forward so that you could stand back and look at somebody else to identify the weak points and try to fix that or help them to steer through that. Especially entrepreneurship is
Mm.
unique. They entrepreneurs typically have skill sets that are good in certain areas, not necessarily in others. And from my
Mm.
experience, is that people that are good in manufacturing is because they did hands-on things and then
Mhm.
became very good. As then the company grows, all of a sudden the structure of the company becomes different, more people involved, more skill sets involved, more management required, managing, strategic thinking, on and on and on and on, banking,
Mhm.
financial, blah blah blah. And the bigger the company becomes, the lesser the initial entrepreneur necessarily, not in all cases, but they need to acquire other skill sets to complement them. And if they make mistakes, too many mistakes, then the company will turn the wrong direction where you want to have it turn the other one. So transferring from right sizing a company, from my experience, extremely important. You can be too small, too quickly, too big, and to find that level of where you feel comfortable. You have developed the skill sets around it, management around it, to before you go to the next step. Again, you have to make sure that the company is adjusted to the new realities, because if it isn't, very quickly can turn into the wrong direction.
Oh, absolutely. I think two things really jump out to me based on what you've shared. The first is that a business owner and an entrepreneur is not the same thing. And I think probably one of the key distinguishing factors involved here is that an entrepreneur is about identifying opportunities, high risk tolerance, and they go out there and they have a dream or a purpose to create something of significance. Where for a business owner, it's not as extreme of an example as that. So I have seen that there's a difference between those two. And the other thing that really jumped out for me is that what you were speaking about is when you first start out, you need high technical skill. But the more senior you get, the less the technical skill is actually relevant anymore because the technical skill you're going to start to delegate as you build your team. So then it does become more around being able to communicate, your leadership ability, your strategic thinking. And there's very little technical in that space.
So what I found is that probably I fit into, I'm an entrepreneur and develop new companies, and then, and once I develop them, then there has to be a challenge. If there isn't, then I look for another challenge. If it is just basic operations, I tend to get bored with that. I need challenges. And part of that may well be because I have to give you just a little bit of background about me. I was born in 1940, so I'm 84 and a half years young now. Have about 10 different companies. Started out with nothing. Academically was not a success story. Failed grade 3, failed grade 7 3 times. And Holland, so they said, what are we going to do with this guy? And my parents were beautiful people. Some people suggested send him to the mentally challenged school. He said, no, we're not going to do that. So let's teach him something where he can work with his hands, because obviously he's not smart enough to be anything else. Although I felt I was just as good as everybody else, but I was different. And so I became a furniture maker. Worked in a furniture factory, and then the other part, special now in April for us, we were liberated by the Canadian Army on April the 12th, 1945, from the German war years, and a lot of those years still are part of my life. PTSD is part of that, saw far too much that we should not have seen. And my dream was that when I grew up, I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And then the other dream I had, in Holland, everything worked this way, is that no matter what you do, if you get a job someplace, you get married, or whatever you do, entrepreneurship, the question was always, where are your diplomas? I didn't have any diplomas. So, so I wanted to go to Canada, start over from nothing. And couldn't speak the language, didn't know a soul, didn't have a job. So left when I was 24 years old, came to Canada, landed in Montreal, took the train across Canada, 4 days, 5 nights. Can you imagine? My God, that is a long way. So then landed in Vancouver, and fortunately went to the immigration department, and fortunately there was a German fellow, and I could speak a little bit of German, and I told him I wanted to build a sawmill. He said, go to Prince George. That's 60 years ago. I can still see here where the Greyhound station used to be, and I came off the bus here, and couldn't speak the language, didn't know soul, didn't have a job, and in my suitcase, and counted my money at least 3 times. I had $25.47. But what I did have is, and always did, I always had positive attitude. I avoid negative already from the time that I was young, but I was an introvert, because of, I believed that I was just as good as everybody else, and I had qualities and abilities. The other one was passion. Whatever I do, I give it 125%. And the other part is work ethic. I work harder than anybody. I get, even now at nearly 85, I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always make my bed, and I always think I'm late. And so that's what I do. And so I started from nothing, virtually, started with 3 employees, worked hard, blah, blah, blah. Then today we have 4 silos. The one silo is lumber manufacturing. The other silo is warehousing, distribution, logistics. The third one is real estate, residential, commercial, industrial. And the fourth one is media. And so media is, I'm a presenter. I do lots of presenting all over the place. But more importantly, I've changed that to being very active on podcasting. We top 1%. We nearly have 1 million views or subscribers on YouTube. And so it's an amazing, just as still at the very beginning, huge potential. And then the other one, I'm an author as well. And so I'm working on my 5th and 6th book. And and what changed my life is really at one point, already I was here for 32 years in Canada, and I still always wondered, why was I so different? And I didn't quite, the question, who am I, was always part of me. And so I walked into a store here in Prince George, actually, in 1997. And I was here already for 32 years. I had been successful, still was successful. And so I picked up a book. I don't know why. I picked up that book, and the book's title was Driven to Distraction, written by Dr. Hollywell. And I looked at the book and I read the book and I said, oh my God, that's me. It was about ADHD. And so I took the book. Now, Dr. Hollywell has written 18 books, is known globally and recognized as 5 books on distraction. He has ADHD and has dyslexia. So do I. And so he wrote this book in 1993. I found it in 1997. This is the actual book. I wrote in Dutch in it because I was ashamed of it. Now finally I know who I am. January 1997. Now you're my podcast number 404. My podcast number 203, On the Brink, is with Dr. Hollywell, actually. Can you believe it? And so we talked about ADHD, frequency of occurrence, that I had thought initially, maybe around 80% or so, probably similar to men and women, although women portray it differently. And then the more I thought about it, and then I was on the podcast with Dr. Hollywell talking about ADHD, I suggested, and he's the expert, and I lived it, that I believe that the frequency of occurrence probably was 20% or more. He said, no, John, it's more than 25%. I agree with them. The other part, interesting enough, I've met so many entrepreneurs, so many business people, sat on board of directors, and all the interaction with all very successful people. And I believe, I suggested to Dr. Hollywell, that 50% of the successful, and successful is the operative here, entrepreneurs or ADHD. He said, no, John, 75%. I agree with him. So it kind of changed my life and still very much part of my life today. So for me, though, that it took me, after I picked up the book, 5 years before I went to my doc, who was a personal friend, delivered our 2 daughters, and he said, hey, John, why are you here? I said, I think I got ADHD. So, and we checked it out, yes, I do. So by then I was 62. So for 50 years, I knew I was different, but I did not know what it was. Up to the time that I found the book, I had no idea what ADHD was all about. But I call it now a superpower.
I so agree with that, because entrepreneurs think differently, especially the ones who are successful. They connect things together that a lot of people don't. So they will look at things in a way where they can see opportunity and no one else will recognize it. So absolutely, I would believe. I mean, that's like having a Ferrari under the hood, but that's forced not to, get out of second gear.
Interesting, Tracy. And I found that so, and all of that is still evolving also as we speak. And sometimes I make presentations about it. I included a lot of times where appropriate. I included somebody in podcasting that I do, and I believe, but it's still evolving as we speak. There's still a certain amount of stigma attached to it, but it is increasingly becoming more obvious that the frequency of occurrence much higher than most people thought. In fact, I believe it's probably more like globally It could well be up to 30% between males and females, although females tend to portray it differently than males. But it is, as you already indicated, and it kind of, for me, you can now see, in order for me to put it into perspective for this presentation, for you, it is important to know, who am I? Who is this guy? Okay, ADHD, has been part of my life. It didn't limit me in terms of my education. It did in that form of education, but not in my personal education, because even when I was still in Holland, when I left with one suitcase, 2 sets of clothes, 3 books, and very little money, obviously. But even when I was still in Holland, I wanted to know what made successful people click. What was the key here? So I would listen to presentations. I would go all over Holland, even then finding out what made them click. And I did the same here when I was in Canada. And obviously, my experience starting out with nothing, going through all the ups and downs, was critical for me, as it was for you, is that learning experience laid the foundation for where I am today. And so now, I was just looking at my book here, so I'm working now on my 5th book, is coming out on July, and it is all about communications and what made it click. The title on it is $1 Billion Communication Skills. That becomes the engine for becoming successful. Saying, for me, it was important. It took me a long time to figure out, who am I? It was not until I found this book in 1997, until I was in my 60s already, that I started to write probably 6 years ago in my 70s, because everybody said, hey, John, you have to write a book about all the interesting stuff that you did. And now writing books, as you know, is not easy. So I wrote this one, 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, stop, start, and then if I don't do it now, it will never happen. And so 2 years to write it, and this is the one. Not about, hurrah, hurrah, how successful John is, just the opposite, all going through all the ups and downs. Then I felt I had to write about ADHD, because then I got an obligation to share what it is. So I wrote this one. It's been quite popular. And then the other one, which is important, and you had that experience as well as I did, as you said, up to your 20s, you really didn't know what direction to go. Then you kind of started, all of a sudden, get interaction, and you found this talent that you have is because you are a good at interacting with people, regardless if you were just the opposite before, but you found that talent. And then in your 40s, you studied psychology, got a degree in psychology, and you were off because, and that's what I wrote the next book about, finding your passion, living the dream. And so what I find a lot of times when I do presentations to young people, in high schools, colleges, university, a lot of times they say, what do you want to do when you're done here? I say, I don't know. I said, well, it's important to, respectfully, to start thinking about it, because then it will give you a direction as to where are you good at. And so you want to be a truck driver, talk to a truck driver. Say, should you own the truck? What kind of a truck? Where, blah, blah, blah. Or you want to be a builder of construction of some sort or another, talk to them. They like to talk to people that are looking at it. So, and see what that is like. Or you want to be an accountant, talk to somebody that does accounting, or a lawyer, or for that matter, an entrepreneur. They all like to talk to people that saying, I'm struggling with where to go and blah, blah, blah. But realized that, and I saw that what motivated me for this book I saw a program on the US television that said 75% of the people in the United States don't like their jobs. I say it's the same in Canada. And probably 70% of that 75% are looking for another job. And so what I say is that I started working when I left school at grade 7. I was 12 and a half years old, so, and I'm, and I didn't find out, today I'm 84 and a half, so for the last 72 years, I've been working and saying, okay, that being said, are you living the dream, John? I am, every single day. And so that's the difference, and I think it's so important. The other one is health and fitness, and that's the one that I'm writing. This picture of me, actually. I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. So fitness and health and diet and all of those elements, extremely important. It's all about quality of life, not the years that are important. So I wrote a book about that.
So interesting, because very often why people stay in jobs that they dislike is because we're so risk averse, and that is just biology. That is just plain biology. We're not wired to go out and look out for risk. So we get into comfort zones and we settle. But the problem with the comfort zone is that it's probably the most uncomfortable place, because there hasn't been a single person, to my knowledge, that has looked back on their life and thought, "Oh wow, I'm so glad I stayed in that dead end job." Right? So I think encouraging a little more risk taking is a good thing. And the other thing to remember is that we don't ever arrive. Right? It's not as though we want to do something and then one day oh yay, I've achieved my goals and now I'm done. I mean, that milestone keeps shifting as you learn and you grow and you develop that wisdom. You don't ever arrive.
And that's probably
Do
a
you
good
feel
thing.
like you've arrived?
No, not even
Yep.
now. So I always look forward saying, where do we go from here? What will it look like?
Uh-huh.
All the silos that I'm involved in, the lumber side, we want to expand. We are negotiating as we speak. The other ones, warehousing, distribution, logistics, we are growing as I speak. Real estate, we are growing as we speak. Media, I'm looking at a platform, global platform. So, and I see lots and lots of opportunity. The books that I showed you, the fifth one is coming out in June, and I'm looking at 2 other ones that will follow. So that's my life. That's the way I look at it. On the other hand, I'm keenly aware of the fact that I'm, the ADHD tends to, I'm not overly good at day-to-day operations because I tend to become bored or I'm looking for challenges. So I always kind of keep building the companies, always looking forward strategically. Where do we go from here? Where will we be even now, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now?
I think you're not alone in not liking the admin, the boring stuff. What about, and I'm just spitballing, but what about, since your passion is clearly ADHD and sharing that experience and how it impacted your life, what about connecting that to the entrepreneurial journey? So you say you speak with kids, and I mean, I don't understand why we stop asking, what do you want to be when you grow up? I think we should still ask that. When you're 20, what do you want to be when you grow up? When you're 25, what do you want to be? Don't stop asking, because when people stop asking, you just think, okay, well, this is it. I'm just made my bed, I'm lying in it. But
I say, even when you're
yeah.
84 and a half,
Uh-huh.
what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? What else do you want to do? And especially with, hence, what I see as an opportunity, Tracey, is podcasting in particular. It's the new media, not newspapers, not the standard media that we all know in North America and in other places, but it is podcasting which has a huge, huge, huge potential as we speak,
Mm.
because we already know that you and me, you're located in South Africa, and so and on the other side of the world from me virtually, and so there I'm sitting in central British Columbia, Canada, and
Mhm.
we are interacting. We never met each other. I saw your bio, about an hour before I started the podcast, and we having this immense, interesting conversation about all the things that mean a lot to you and me in terms of experience and finding, the parts that we have a passion about, and the opportunity to share that with the rest of the globe, because we know that probably a couple of million of people will see this, because we are approaching 1 million people on YouTube and as subscribers, and so in all the other platforms combined, it has immense potential.
Mhm. I know I shouldn't be asking the questions, but it's a casualty of being a coach. I can't help it. But what would be your biggest message? So based on everything that you've gone through, everything that you've experienced, all of the incredible, the journey that you've walked, if you had to put that into one sentence and that was the sentence that you wanted to be known for, what would that look like?
The biggest challenge, as I said to you earlier, Tracy, it took me till I was 62 before I knew who am I. And then the other
Mhm.
part, I didn't used to be a good communicator. It was not until I was already 50 years old that I went to an organization called Toastmasters to
Mm.
unlock my potential, as it did for you. I had that quality that I always suppressed. I was an introvert, not an
Mhm.
extrovert, and so I started then communicating. So this message that I always give to people that I believe best describes me: attitude, passion, work ethic, what follows is success. And the other one that I share with young people in particular, but also medium sized people, I say that too many people are too preoccupied about me being them. That's not right. This is not right. This is not right. I say there is only one of you on this whole earth, and you
Mm.
are special. Not better than, but you are special. So feel that way as you
Mm.
are. Not based on religion, not based on any of that, but there is only
Mm.
one of you. And then at the same time, what is important to me is giving back to the community. That's how I grew up. That's what I do even here. It's not about money. It's not about, hey, John is so important. He's so successful. It's not about that. It's about respect, and that they say he gave back to the
Mm.
community in different ways wherever possible. And that to me is very, very important.
Mm. Are you familiar with spiral dynamics?
No.
I think I think that might be something that would be particularly interesting to you because it describes social systems in the form of a spiral. Developing social systems are at the bottom, and they start with beige, and they have certain characteristics. So when you look at nations, for example, they will fall somewhere on the spiral, and everything that you're describing is it points toward a quite a highly evolved positioning in that spiral. And unfortunately, what that means is that there is likely disconnect because not a lot of people will think that way. I mean, if you have a look at cognitive capability, for example, the majority of people would be, let's say, average. Right now, yeah, I don't want to go into that. But if you say majority of people are average, the further you get from average, either on either the higher side or the lower side, it becomes outliers. But unfortunately, what that means is that it's it's more difficult to find people to interact with because there's so much less of them, right? So yeah, I think it's challenging to find your people for a lot of different reasons. Personality, absolutely. Social systems, absolutely. But cognitive capability is a big part of that. Like how does your brain how do you think? How do you connect things? How do you view the world and everything in it?
Interesting, because I did a podcast yesterday, actually, I believe. That
Mhm.
was my podcast number 202 or something, 402. And it was about a fella that spoke about, he was the founder of consciousness training.
Mhm.
And those are dealing with the issues that you raise. In
Mhm.
particular, is saying that how do we find similarities? How do we interact for all the basic foundational issues? So many people, we are so divided, and we tend to be, in a lot of cases, to be negative, where we should try. How do we create that interaction that is not stuck in one particular direction? May it be politics, may it be religion, may it be other things, but brings us more together.
I'm going to say something that's not going to be very popular, but I feel that a lot of this is attributed to our population explosion because we've made things very safe. Jordan Peterson covers this beautifully, and he's Canadian. But uh, so I I don't think that the best situation for human beings is to be in the size societies or cultures or groups that we have now. In smaller groups, there's more contribution, right? You're a part of a system, but you're an important part of that system. If I look at myself, and I mean, I'm in a third world. I'm not even in a first world, but I'm very aware of the fact that I'm a very small cog and I don't have any control. So it's not as though I can say, well, unhappy with the situation and bring about change on my own. I just think that the structures of a culture of people is being taxed to the extreme. We do not have the ability to manage that. And I'll say yet, because, he's developing things all the time. But I mean, if you look at the advances in technology and you look at, access to the information we've got now, it is absolutely overwhelming because, yes, there's globalization, absolutely. But I do feel that we've never been more disconnected than what we are now, even though we're more connected than ever.
Yeah, interesting that you raised that. Jordan Peterson, I know the guy in the sense that I watched some of his, I know he's from here. I think he is in the States now. I've tried to get him on my podcast, but, so far he has not reacted to me. Maybe if you know him, tell him to contact me. No, I'm just joking. But he tends to
I was
be.
going to take it like, yes, I have that power. Of course, I'll pull straight. I know him, Jordan.
John Hake, talk to John. So he's fairly intellectual, and that's a good thing. And he's controversial. He's been very, very successful. So the
Mhm.
part, probably, the looking at changes that are taking place now is that, as you already know, and I probably know more than most people, is that when I came to Canada in 1965, we sent telexes, say, I'm doing okay, stop, hope you're okay, stop, I found a job, stop, I make $2 an hour, I'm all excited about that, and I'm trying to learn the language, stop, and then eventually they would send me something back. Now I have a cell phone, I push the button, I can talk to them, I can see them instantly. And then the next thing that is happening is that AI, artificial intelligence, is becoming part of our lives. And I believe A lot of people, there's still people around that think the genie can go back in the bottle. Well, it won't. It will change our lives even more than computers did already, and that's probably a good thing. And then the other part, in terms of what we are doing, Tracy, I feel that this podcasting, not my podcast, but in a general sense, is the foundation for interacting with the rest of the world. It's the biggest global access piece available to everybody. And if we, and I hope mine is part of that, share with the world our views and what worked for us, and what is beneficial, and sharing our experiences, I believe that's a step in the right direction. And I feel that both you and me doing what we are doing can have an influence, which I hope is then looked at as being positive.
Mm. I feel, and I don't know if you would share this impression, but I honestly believe that the workplaces of tomorrow, where this digital transformation is going, I think that is actually going to position anyone with ADHD way ahead of the curve, because it's a different language, and I think that it's a language that they're going to excel in. So that's quite exciting.
I believe so too. It's very exciting, actually. So now I just had to go back to your bio. We covered a lot of stuff. So I'm looking at but what are the 5 superpowers of successful entrepreneurs
Oh,
from your
we've only
experience?
got 15 minutes. I don't think there's enough time. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So the first one is going to be mindset.
Yeah.
If you go in with a mindset of I can't, or I'm not in control, or it's hard, it's not going to work. You have to go in with a growth mindset. The second thing is curiosity. Entrepreneurs need to stay curious, because as soon as they think that they've got the answers, as soon as they think they know it all, stop learning, and they don't develop from there. So you have to keep nurturing that. Ironically, the curiosity is also connected with asking great questions, right? So if you think of kids ask about 400 questions in a day, and as we get older, it's less and less and less. I think an adult asks about, I think it's something like 40. We have to ask better questions, because the results that we're going to get are going to be a consequence of asking really good questions. The third thing is the ability to learn languages. So it's about communication, but it's about learning the communication of business. It's about learning the communication of marketing. It's about learning the communication of performance, and then merging all of those together and speaking the language of investors. So an entrepreneur that doesn't understand how to speak to the customer can't win. An entrepreneur who doesn't understand how to read his financials or her financials, not looking for big growth. The fourth one is don't use subjective measurements. So this is all about data. It's almost like a scientific approach in saying, well, you're going to feel one way about something, but what data can you put in place so that you can make sure it's not just thinking, right? It's not just wishful thinking. So you have to look at figures, you have to look at numbers, you have to know how many, how often, when, is it yes, is it no, and make it as objective as possible. And then I think the final one, and so many entrepreneurs forget this, is you have to learn how to have fun, because it's going to be hard. As long as you are growing, it is going to be hard. You have to be able to function despite that. And you have to be able to carve out a place for yourself where you can still laugh, you can still engage. Like, you don't get fully absorbed in the trials of it. And if you can do, if you're very good at those things, then you're absolutely going to be set up for success.
So the other part is, what should anyone know before you start a business? And and let me add one there, but because that's a question I get a lot of times. And I
Mhm.
said to have the illusion, as some people do, that entrepreneurs and successful business people are preoccupied with planning holidays and bringing money to the bank. I say no. So things will, and you already related to that, is that no matter how well you plan, no matter what happens, you will have to be prepared that things are going to be a challenge. And to be in relationships that are supportive of that is also very, very important, because
Mhm.
not everybody feels comfortable going through the ups and downs along the way. And so
Yeah.
that those parts are very important.
It's funny, if you look at relationships, something that's become very evident is through periods of not being successful. We have certain types of relationships, but if you really want to measure the quality of a relationship, specifically around extended family or friends, it is when entrepreneurs actually see success. So when they become successful, relationships very often change, because it's easier to be in when you're all the same, but as soon as you start standing out, there's it can have a big negative impact on the quality of your relationships.
So that then being said, so that would discourage some people from potentially moving in that direction. And I say no, that even when you're not sure about it, make sure that the people that are close to you in your life, that you make them part of the challenges along the way, and then at the same time create as much comfort as possible for them, because in order for you to be successful, they have to feel they are part of it.
Mm. I I believe that one of the big things that needs to be, and I'm not talking about running a business, because
No.
as I've said earlier, I believe that there's a difference between someone who owns a business and someone who is an entrepreneur. So when it comes to the entrepreneur side, there's no question. An entrepreneur cannot do a 9 to 5. It just is, it's a square peg in a round hole. It cannot work. An entrepreneur is born to figure out a path that is not typical. So they will find their feet, and they can fail and they can succeed. They get, not every entrepreneur enjoys success, but it's almost like a different kind of person. It's something you're born with. When it comes to business ownership, you can run a very successful business without thinking, I want to transform the world, or I want to have this huge impact. And I think it's important to understand the difference between the two. So entrepreneurs, you will see them early on, because they'll be the ones that are selling their lunch, to make some money, and they're the ones that are going on their milk route, or they're the ones doing other kids' homework, and you will know it. It's not a question of am I, it's the signs are there. uh, for business owners, it's a bit different. And what I see a lot of is, specifically when you have specialists moving into the business world, it's important for them to understand that the mindsets that make you and the skills that make you successful in that specialized area need to shift if you're going to be successful in the business world. So just because you're a wonderful, caring doctor, it doesn't mean that you can apply those same skills and become a successful business owner, because it's not the same thing.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
the what I tend to say is that if you aspire to work from 9 till 5, that likely will not make you suitable for starting your own stuff. So what I usually say, I work from 5 till 9.
Mhm.
So that is a better description of what I do. So, and I don't mind that actually.
And it's
So
funny you bring up the 9 to 5, because so many of my clients, once they've been running their business, 10 years, 20 years, one of the first things that they say they want is time freedom. They want to have less time. I'm thinking that's so interesting because you don't get less time in the business unless you are so strong in the business that you put in the support, the tracking and the people to run it up for you so that you can. But I mean, that takes a tremendous amount of time, effort, and energy.
And those kind of people are hard to find unless they are entrepreneurial. And if they're entrepreneurial, they probably want to do their own thing. And so,
Absolutely.
but for me, I like to, maybe because of ADHD, I like to keep growing my businesses. That to me is
Yeah.
the challenge. And then try to make the other companies being accountable in such a way that it is relatively easily managed. So on the lumber side, in particular, that company has been in business now for 50 years when I started it from the ground up. So, so that has been in place for a long time. So if you look at all of this now, how do you even start to become the best version of yourself? How do you start doing that and saying, bringing you and me back to saying, in my particular case, who am I? Well, John, you're
Yep.
ADHD and dyslexia. Don't get a hang up about it because you will become successful as you go forward. Nobody told me that at grade 3 or grade 7.
Yeah.
They said, hey,
Oh,
you will never amount to anything. You know.
yeah. I think that what is so important is there's there's only two things that you need to know to be able to do anything that is transformational. And that is, you need to understand what is the starting point, and you need to really dig in there. What's going on here, and not only look at it from one perspective. You need to look at it from financially, what's going on, relationship, what's going on, mentally, what's going on, play, what's going on, interests, hobbies, life. You need to be able to almost like look at all the different characteristics of yourself, almost like you walk into a library and you see the way the books are on the shelf and organized. You need to put yourself into, okay, what are the pieces that make me up? And then you need to work out, well, where am I doing well? Where am I happy? And where, if I focused on it, would impact my quality of life, in a significant way. So once you're very clear on your starting point, the next thing is to get as clear as you can on what you want. Right. And this isn't, I do this with entrepreneurs all the time. One of the first things that I ask them when I sign them up is, what does success look like to you? And I get these like blank looks because it's like, well, I want $1 million practice. I'm like, wait a second, what is that going to give you that you don't have now? So it's so ironic because we stop asking, what do you want to be when you grow up? But we also don't feature what is, if I have a successful life, if I look back on my life and I say, wow, that was absolutely incredible, what would I have wanted in my life? What would I have wanted? The experiences, the wins, uh, people don't know. Right? You don't know what's ahead. The terrible thing is that you become more clear when you look back. So when you look back, when you're 63 and you're figuring out who you are, and you look back, and it's almost like you can see the path that you've walked, but it wasn't something you could have directed for yourself. The interesting thing is, what if you could? What if, regardless of what your starting point is, what if you could say to yourself, well, this is something that is meaningful to me? Now, I think meaning comes later in life. Most people, when you're starting out, you're just trying to be a human being that gets by and then gets by very well. But I think as you age, it becomes more and more evident that there's more to living than stuff and money. And then I'm thinking of now Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Then it becomes more important in finding out what is meaningful. How am I going to contribute in my space so that I'm engaged in what I'm doing? I'm fighting for something, uh, and I think that is absolutely critical for living a well lived life.
Tracy, it was an amazing podcast from South Africa. Don't give up on going to Canada. Stay in touch with me. You have all my contacts. But all these people watching us, johnabrink.com has all my activities showing. Do you have a podcast or an email address or where people that want to be in touch with you can reach you?
Sure. People can reach me at superclinicproject.com.
So say
That's
it once more.
our podcast.
So,
Superclinicproject.com.
okay. And so, for all the people watching us from around the world, if you like what we are doing, encourage us to go further and do more of these podcasts. Subscribe to us, like it, share it with others, comment on it. And so, it is the amazing world of podcasting around the globe. And again, Tracy, it was a pleasure and a privilege. Let's stay in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Tracy. Take care.